what we use, or what's the preferred basket material of choice in Appalachia, and especially Hart County, is a white oak tree. And I think the scientific name is Quercus alba. There's a lot of other white oaks, but the regular Quercus alba white oak is what we use. So this was the top of the tree that I cut last Tuesday over in Butler County. And so the tree was about 8 foot long, and I cut this off because there's some knots and stuff that you can see right here. I didn't want to have to work with it. And if you count the rings, it's probably 25, 30 years old. To get started with this, we get a steel wedge and drive in the end, then you leapfrog the wedges down and split it in half. Then you get the half and leapfrog the wedges down it and split it in a quarter. Then you get that and split it into an eighth. And what I'm going to unwrap here is a 16th of the tree. So you didn't have to watch me huff and puff doing the heavy work. We're going to jump right to the 16th. And I got to unwrap it. We keep the wood wrapped up so the moisture stays in it. So this is a form of green woodworking. Everything is worked green. Okay, so what we got right here is a 16th of the tree. The tree grew this way. That was the bottom of the tree. There's the top of the tree. And also when we're processing it, we got to keep track of which side is the bark side and which side is the underneath side. The first thing I'm going to do is take the bark off, clean it up, get it down to a workable width. And if you can feel this, it's just sopping wet. It takes quite a few months for this to dry out. And so the tool I'm using is just called a draw knife. And this is the foot-powered clamp is a shaving horse. It looks sort of like a horse's head. But the bucket makers, coopers, and chair makers are the people, and some basket makers use the shaving horse. So I need to get this down to about a 5/8 in width, because I'll be able to split it. If it's too wide, it's hard to split and to control the splitting. So it's a step-by-step process where we'll split it one way, then split it another way, till we finally get down, as Leslie Childers says, we get it down to like a tobacco stick size, and then we can start making the splits. Oop. Now the white oak tree is like a sassafras or walnut tree. It's called ring porous. In the early spring, the tree grows very, very fast and forms all those little tubes that carries the sap up to the top of the tree. And as the tree slows down, it makes solid wood. So every ring has those little pores, and I'm going to try to split it right in the middle on one of those rings all the way down. So the idea is to keep splitting in half and half and half until we get to one ring of growth. Okay, let's get started with this. Let's see. Okay. We've got to clean up the end of it. The light up here is kind of not so good. So I'm working on the end grains and trying to get it cleaned up so I can see the rings. So we're going to have to just guess at it right here. And I'm going to split it with a tool called a froe. And this is just 2 inclined planes, and it's dull here. It's not a cutting tool. It's a splitting tool. So we're going to try to just pop that loose. And if we're lucky, we'll stay in the same ring all the way down. And we've got a knot right here. We'll have to see what happens here. Okay. I'm going to make a judgment call. We're going to saw this off, because if I go through here, it's probably going to screw things up. What does Kenny Rogers say? You got to know when to fold them, know when to hold them. Well, I'm going to fold right now. And this weird saw is a Japanese Ryoba saw. It's got a cross-cut teeth on one side and a rip cut. Cross-cut means going this way, rip means going down the length of a log. So it's 2 saws in one, and it cuts on the pull stroke, which is kind of works, because the draw knife works on the pull stroke, so it works for white oak basket making. All right, let's start this again. There we go, that's better. Then I'm going to keep flipping it over as we go, make sure it's not running, that it's staying in the middle. Sometimes it'll try to twist on you. So far, so good. Yeah, there we go. And there's basically 2 parts to the tree, not counting the bark. You've got the sapwood, which is up here, and that's the part of the tree that's alive and carrying all the sap up to the tree. Then you got the heartwood, which is a little bit darker, and it's the part, it's closer to the center, or is the center. And as the tree grows, from the center you get, when there's a little bitty sapling, you get all these limbs everywhere, and it gets bigger, the limbs drop off and the tree goes up. So in the heartwood, there's usually more limbs and more aberrations, so you get more yield out of the sapwoods. That's pretty clean looking pieces, no knots. It's still a little bit wide, but now it's easier to cut because it's not as thick. Let's get it down to about 5/8. Okay. And I'm also cleaning it up. You see some of this is a little bit fuzzy from the early splits, but the cleaner that is, the better I can see where to split it. And these shavings make really good fire starter once they're dry. And once we get down to 1 ring, to make them narrower, you just cut them with scissors. And Lester and Ollie used to heat with wood, and they gather up all the shavings at the end of every day. They worked in the kitchen and threw them in the wood stove, which is in their garage. So if Lester couldn't find his scissors the next day, Ollie said, "Did you burn them up again?" So he'd go and get the ashes out of the wood stove and find his scissors. All right, let's get this going again. So again, I'm still trying to, well, let's work from the other end. So this was the top of the tree. Okay. Let's see, there it is. So I can see the edge of the ring. So I'm trying to keep it in that same ring all the way down. And by keeping equal weights of wood on either side of the split, it helps me do that. I can't just take off 2 rings off of 10 rings. It wouldn't work. Okay. We're not doing too badly. So again, this tree was cut Tuesday, and it'll last about a month, so I need to get in and work up as many of the 16th inch pieces, I mean it's 1/16 inch pieces, before the sapwood starts to rot. And we taught a lot of people how to do this through different weekend workshops. And so when we're doing this, one of my lines was, every time you split it, you're doubling your productivity. So that's a good thing. And now, if it'll let us, we can stay right there and just, I'm putting more pressure on the thick side or whichever way that you put more pressure whichever way it needs to keep it in the middle. We're not exactly in the middle, but I think it's working. So now we got about 2 to 3 rings here. So I'm just going to try to go in the middle. And this looks dangerous, but and it can be. Whoop. So let's do it another way, because this is definitely safe. We can split it right here. Whoop, and get it started. There we go. So Lester and Ollie would work in their kitchen every day. They'd wash the dishes, leave the rinse water there to soak the dry splits. Lester would get a piece of wood, and he would split wood for an hour. And that was enough splits, and we're calling this a split for the weaving. They could make 2 to 3 baskets every day. And the rib baskets consist of hoops. That'd be a little bitty hoop for a little miniature egg basket. You got 2 of those, and you have ribs. Then you have splits. So I might could split this again. Let's just see. This is actually 1 ring of growth pretty much all the way down. If we had 2, and if we demonstrate with grade school kids, you get two boys to pull this, there's no way they can break it. Let's try this knife. Okay, so now we're getting down to 1/2 of a ring. And you can see that the wood is very flexible. Sometimes you get trees that are brittle and you can't make this last split, so you end up use that wood for bigger baskets, larger baskets. And so I'm just doing whatever it takes to keep this in the middle. If it runs off, you can restart it. And I might make it all the way down. No, I'm just going to run it off. So you got a shorter piece here and a longer piece here. So and you can let that dry, and you can reconstitute it. A couple years from now, if you got it out of the sunlight, you can take that and re-soak it and be ready to work. To make it thinner, you get a knife, and you hold your knife vertical. And you make it thinner. So that's pretty thin. Now that it's not very long. I could make a basket. It could be a 6-inch basket. It could be an 8-inch basket if you had enough of these pieces. And to make it narrower, you notice a lot of the baskets have very fine weavers. So that's about 5/8. If you wanted a 1/4-inch piece, you just get your scissors and just eyeball it. And I'm looking at this side right here and just make it a 1/4 inch all the way down. And the way the characteristics of the white oak, the way the splits are and the way the grain of the wood, there's really no way to mechanize this. We've tried rotary cutters, we've tried a gang of razor blades, to pull it through, and it just doesn't work on white oak. The Shaker tradition up in New Hampshire, with working with black ash, you end up with the same strip of wood, but it's be black ash, and the characteristics of the black ash is you can use a gang of razor blades and pull a big wide piece through and cut them all at once. So, buddy, if you want to come up, we'll just pass that around. You can feel the wet, you're not going to break it. And that's ready to go in the basket. What did that take, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? So another 3 hours, I'd have enough for a basket. Let's do something, let's see. Yeah, we can do I got another piece in here. Let me see if we can do some carving on a handle. If y'all have got any questions, feel free to speak up. Okay, here we go. If you can see the profile of this, it's flat on top and down, so that's the center of the tree right here. That was underneath the piece I was using earlier. And it's got a big knot right here. So if I was making some kind of hoop or a handle, let's saw it right here. We'll clean this up and make a bigger hoop. And then we'll make some ribs or a different type of handle up here. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to square this up. I want my sides to be perpendicular to this was the top of the basket or the part closest to the bark. Whoop. So we want everything, all these rings at right angles to the cuts. Okay, try to get a fairly even width. So let's see if we can split this in half and see if we can get 2 hoops out of it. And all this part at the very center of the tree is maybe we'll make some ribs if we need it, but usually it's not as good a quality. Got a few more knots in it. Okay, now let's split this one in half. Okay, that didn't do good. Let's try it from this side. There we go. So we want a fairly thick piece, maybe a 3/16 thick for a hoop, and I can clean it up and make it a little bit thinner and a little bit narrower. Okay, so if that's going to be our hoop, what I like to do, I got to get a board to support it because it's kind of flimsy. Let's clean the top up. The top, again, being the part closest to the bark. And it bends better with the bark up, so to speak. Now I'm going to get the thickness off the bottom. So we want a uniform thickness all the way down. So I'm looking at the edge, kind of judging what we need to take off. And the more uniform it is, the better it's going to bend. Okay. Now another way to trim this down, it's a little bit narrower here, so let's make this a little bit narrower. You hold your knife still and you pull the wood. That's a very safe technique because your knife's not going anywhere. And again, I didn't figure this out. This is what Lester Childress showed me. It's still a little bit thick. So you could do all this just with your pocket knife, but the draw knife and the shaving horse makes it a little easier to work with. Okay, we can knock the corners off so it feels good. And it's still on the thick side, but I think we can, if we wanted a nice hoop, it's going to bend. Yeah, it's extra thick down here. Let's get rid of that. And there we go. So this is called cold bending. You don't need to steam it when it's a fresh small tree like this. You can just stretch those fibers, actually overstretching them. It's stretching on the outside and compressing on the inside. And if it's a good tree, you can get rid of this. You can get by doing this. If we had a bigger, we use big shipping logs from Woodstock and from Halbrine Sawmill, but we had to steam those to make the handles. So that would be the hoop. And as it dries overnight, it's it won't be so rubbery tomorrow. So you want to just try to get it round. You can make an oval hoop too if you needed an oval basket. I'll let it dry, and tomorrow I'll straighten it out and carve this down to make a scarf joint, which you want the joint, that overlap right here, to be the same thickness as the whole thing. You carve the top of one side and the bottom of the other. And you can notice on some of the rims and the hoops on the baskets here that you want your overlaps to look, well, you shouldn't be able to find them. It should be the exact same thickness. If you had two of these, you could start an egg basket. And if you wanted to do a rib, you could This is that very bottom piece. And some baskets, the Kentucky baskets, have 4 or 5 big flat ribs on the bottom, which you start off with. And the Tennessee baskets have all round ribs. So every region had their own style of manufacturing baskets. And also all over the country, he had basket makers. I think there's white oak basket makers in every county in Kentucky. It happened to be that there's 400 families in Hart County making baskets even in the 50s. But every region of the country had their own preferred material that would make baskets and had their own construction techniques. The Navajos and the Utes do a coil construction where they get oak leaf sumac and skein it and split it out. Skeining means that you split it in 3 pieces and clean up the middle. Then they have the rods and you coil it around like sewing. And Amanda May, a Ute basket maker that we met, called it sewing. And you start in a circle and you keep spiraling and you add in more ribs and add on the weavers and you dye your weavers. And the Charleston baskets, a lot of people are familiar with the gullah baskets down in Charleston made out of sweetgrass. And that's a coil construction. That construction came from Africa. I got a knife here somewhere. There it is. So I'm going to get this down and make a little bitty flat rib out of it for a smaller basket, just to show you how things are processed. So even this really crummy piece of wood from the center could still be used for something. We clean it up, we try to get it uniform. And this will be making a rib blank. I'm going to point one end. I'm not going to point both ends because I don't know how long I need it. Let's see, is Beth here? Can you get the honeysuckle egg basket? We'll use that as a prop. That would help explain what we're doing. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Aunt Vanna. So we got the hoop I just made. You've got a horizontal hoop over here. You tie them together with your lashing, the one we passed around. You could tie this together. And I usually like to nail this so they don't slide around. Then this rib would go right in here. And you bend it around. And you cut it to length. And you can cut it with, if you've got some nice little pruning shears. Then you sharpen the other end. I'm going to fill my basket with shavings here. So everything is just done by eyeball. Now, Leona Waddell had made her signature egg baskets for so long. She had a stick and had her rib lengths marked off on this stick, and she'd make two identical pieces, or one rib thick, split it, so she had one for one side, one for the other. And she would, one of her tricks, because this wood's still kind of rubbery, so she'd get her ribs made, maybe bend them over a piece of cardboard box to shape them. Then she'd use them the next day when they weren't quite so rubbery. So if this was the rib that we wanted for that basket, again, you stretch the fibers. And I'm stretching every inch, and if you're metric, I'm stretching every millimeter. And so that would stick into the wrapping. You poke a hole in this with your awl, stick that in there. You bend it around and stick it on this side. Then you might do 4 more or 5 more. You weave a little bit, and you add in ribs. They just stick into the weaving. And you keep adding ribs. And one example of that is the hen basket or the purse basket back there, the Cherokee style. And you can really see how many ribs I've added. And you want to keep the ribs most of the time about 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch apart. Some expert white oak basket makers almost have the ribs touching on the whole basket. And we've got some examples at home made by Cindy Taylor and her husband, Aaron Yakum. And their baskets are just unbelievably good. They live up in West Virginia. So that's, if you had 8 of those, you could put in 4 here, and start weaving. Then start making some round ribs, which is the same thing. It just starts off square. So that's white oak basket making 101. Anybody want to get started? Got any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you make every piece of wood that she uses for her basket?
If she's doing a white oak basket, we work together. But I might split out the splits, and she'll be scraping them and sizing them. When she does the willow basket, she goes out and harvests the willow and processes it. Sometimes you take big pieces of willow, and she gets the bark off and rolls that up, and then uses that like the square piece here in the niche in the middle. That's all willow bark. And so there's willow is very versatile, and every time you cut it, it gets better. And you can take the willow, use the full rods. You can take the bark off and use the rods. You can take the bark off and split it in 3 pieces and clean it up. One of the slides here is a tray that Beth made, and the weavers are about 1/32 of an inch. And it starts off maybe 1/4 inch, but you got a vertical cutter and a horizontal cutter made out of steel, and you make it narrower, then you make it thinner. And you go back and forth adjusting all this until you get it mechanically down the size you want. That's the German technique of skeinin willow. When they skein the oak leaf sumac for Ute tribal baskets, ceremonial baskets, they split the oak leaf sumac in 3 pieces and carve off the stomach, peel off the bark. Then they take their grandmother's knife and carve it. Or they might use a baking soda tin. You drive holes in it with a screwdriver, different sizes of screwdrivers. It makes a die, and you can pull it through, and it trims it and makes it narrow. So whatever tool you use, I'm just using a knife. but you need some kind of thin, flexible material. And willow is either round or can be flat or flat oval. And with the white oak, you get the real thin, flat weavers. And you got ribs, or some of these baskets, they might have big, wide stakes, and you weave with the weavers. So does that answer the question? Anything else? All right, thank you all for coming.